Good evening, everyone. We'll bring our special city council meeting to order. Is there a motion on tonight's agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda for the special city council meeting on August 16th.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. To the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Shelley Beck submitted her letter of resignation on Tuesday, August the 11th, 2021. Mrs. Beck's term of office expires on December 31st, 2024. The resignation is not official until accepted and approved by City Council. Because the council must fill vacancies in elective offices, it should by resolution declare the vacancy and fill the seat as soon as possible. Resolution 2021-52 is attached to initiate that purpose. Once these steps are completed, council can discuss the process of filling the vacancy. The process was discussed with the city attorney, and his recommendation involved two options: advertise for applications for the position, interview qualified candidates, and by vote make an appointment, or the council could make the appointment directly to fill the vacant council seat if there's a consensus of council. Previous practices have been the first option, which is advertise for applications, select the candidates, interview them, and vote for the appointment. Council may consider those unsuccessful candidates that ran for city council in the 2020 general election as a potential appointee, but is not required to do so. As the city does not have an ordinance stating that a special election shall be held to fill the vacancy prior to the next general election, the special election for this seat will be held at the next city election on November the 8th, 2022. As over 2 years exist on Council Member Beck's term, council needs to make an appointment to fill the vacancy until the next election. That election will be held on November 8th, 2022, and will have the mayor and 2 city member seats that will be up for election on the ballot. On the same ballot, but as a separate item, will be the special election for the seat of the remaining 2 years of Mrs. Beck's term. That means 2 council members will be elected to a 4-year term and 1 council member to a 2-year term. This will keep council members' terms staggered for each election cycle. Regardless of any method used for appointment, the appointee's term for Mrs. Beck's seat will run from the date of the swear-in to December 31st, 2022. The appointee could run for the remaining 2 years of Councilmember Beck's term in the special general election of 2022. Staff recommends that City Council consider the acceptance of the resignation of Councilmember Shelley Beck and declare a vacancy on council by approving Resolution 2021-52. At the conclusion of that, staff recommends council discuss and direct staff as to the means and timeline of appointments to this seat for the temporary term that will expire on December 31st, 2022.
Okay, before we proceed, you got just a small error in your write-up. Her letter of resignation was August 10th,
Okay.
not 11. So I see it's correct in the resolution. So let's act on the resolution first.
I'll make a motion for approval of resolution 2021-52, accepting the resignation of city council member Beck and declaring a vacancy on the city council.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made, second. Discussion. Hearing none. To the motion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes, and we do have a vacancy. So the second part of this is deciding how we want to fill this appointment up until the rest of next year. Which I do have a question. I think we need probably clarification. Only because I've seen it in other cities, is when they have the special election, they take office as soon as it's certified. So if you can check with Chris, I mean, it's
Sure.
a small detail at this point, but rather than going to the end of December, I've seen them, as soon as they certify it, they take the seat, so. But, okay. So we have a choice of making an appointment, choice of taking applications.
Now, my feeling is I'd like to see it advertised. I mean, there's people out there that, you know, if they want an opportunity, this is their chance to get up and be heard in the city, so I'd say put it out for advertising.
Yeah, sounds fine by me.
I think it should go to the person who had the next highest number of votes in the last election, since it's not even been a year. But that being said, we still have to have a special election according to state statute. It says, if the vacancy occurs before the first day to file affidavits of candidacy for the next regular city election and more than 2 years remain on the unexpired term, a special election shall be held at or before the next regular city election, and the appointed person shall serve until the qualification of the successor. So we have to appoint somebody, yes, but we still need a special election.
Well, the special election will happen November 8th, 2022.
That's not what this says. This says before the next, we can have one this fall, easy.
We don't have an ordinance on that, so we
Jack,
can't do that.
Jack, can you explain that? We talked about that.
And again, I sent council the attorney's opinion on that. It's before you here highlighted. The key thing to have that special election before a general election, the city has to have an ordinance authorizing it to do so. We do not have that ordinance.
State statute supersedes the city's ordinances anyways.
That's what's in state statute, though. It says if the council chooses to hold a special election to fill a vacancy at a time other than the regular city election, it must first adopt an ordinance specifying the circumstances under which that election will be held. And it's also here under Mr. Nelson's opinion.
Wasn't there something about a date certain also because of, has to be filed so many days before election day?
That's correct. If it's not filed by a certain date, this was filed on August the 10th. Had there been an election up for this year, filing date was, the end of filing date was August the 10th, the same date the resignation was submitted. The resignation is not effective until city council approves it, so we only have a resignation now, which is 6 days, 7 days after the filing date, so.
Okay.
But the key thing is you have to have an ordinance authorizing a special election. We don't have that ordinance, so special elections then will be held at the next general election.
Well, it only takes a minute to, or not a minute, but a little while to do an ordinance. We could have had an ordinance here for this.
No, we have to advertise the ordinance, have public hearings on it, and,
Well, we're also past the 10th.
yeah.
We're 6 days past the date anyway.
But this isn't an election year. He said if this were an election year. This is not even an election year.
It still doesn't matter, and, you know, again, if anybody wants further explanation on this, we can have the city attorney look at it again, but again, his opinion is, and it states, because the city does not have an ordinance stating that a special election shall be held prior to the next regular election, the special election for council members Beck's seat will be held at the next regular city election, which is November the 8th, 2020.
And that's only pertains to cities, right?
That's correct.
The counties and state, they have to do a special election.
If they have that enabling stuff in their ordinances or in their election rules. And this is referencing state statute 412.02 subdivision 2A. So this is what our city attorney says, and I read it, and I'm not an attorney, but it appears that that's the correct, he's correct on that. If you read down here at the bottom, this is the phrase that overrides that we have to have that ordinance in order to have a special election. Without the ordinance, we cannot have the special election before the next general election.
So, I mean, my interpretation of why they did that is to save the city's costs.
That's correct. And the other thing is to mobilize for a special election, let's say even if it was done and we had a day, there's gonna be a huge effort to get all of our voting machines calibrated, certified, metered, getting the election judges, getting the precincts lined up, and our costs for a general election are about $12,000 to $15,000. This would be probably half that, so It doesn't matter how many we're running.
Okay.
It's just the fact it's gonna add quite a bit of additional cost.
My understanding of this statute is that because the Shelley's term had 3 years left on it, and it says the council must specify an ordinance, which means the council must create an ordinance to run this special election. It doesn't have to, it's not that they don't have one currently, they're supposed to create one.
Where do you see it says they must have one? Because I don't read that in here.
Well, it says they shall have a special election, and it shall be held at or before the next city election. Then it says the council must specify by ordinance under what circumstances it will hold a special election to fill the vacancy.
I think that's what we're following.
Yeah.
It says at the
But-
next,
Your
City election.
interpretation and my interpretation are not matching from what I understand, because I'm understanding it to say that if there's a vacancy and it exceeds 2 years, you shall have a special election. Therefore, you must have an ordinance to have this special election. So you have to make an ordinance to do the special election to comply with the statute.
It just says the ordinance must specify the circumstances by which you're having the special election. It doesn't say you must have the ordinance. The ordinance is optional.
I mean, for what you just
Yeah.
read, Suzanne, I don't have that in front of me, but, well, I do have it in front of me. The city must hold a special election to fill a council vacancy at or before the next regular city election. The next regular city election is
Next year.
November of 2022. I mean, it sounds like we'd have the option, if we had the ordinance, to have a special election sooner. But then we're spending a significant amount of money to fill a partial seat. And I think that's why they have my guess is that's why they have the state statute written that way, so. Because vacancies happen on
Yeah.
councils quite often. We've had a couple here even, so.
Going back to the vacancies that we've had here, we had one in 2009 with the resignation of Councilmember Ann Klein, who moved out of the city. So she notified the council that she was resigning. The process then was the one that is under current motion now. Took applications, selected candidates, interviewed them, and made the appointment. The other issue was in 2014, when our past mayor was removed from office for a residency issue, and we followed that same process then. So, however, on both of those, the 2-year term wasn't involved in that. Both had already passed their midpoint of their elected terms. So we didn't have to do that, but this is why we consulted with the city attorney to see exactly what we had to do on this. And he's told us we do not have to have the special election because we do not have the ordinance that authorizes us to do so.
Okay. So applications. We can advertise on the website, advertise on the reader board. I don't think we need to have a long application time period to get applications in, so. I'd like to suggest we close the applications at the end of business on Friday. And then you can get it out to us Monday, and then we can decide, I mean, you can get the applications
Yep.
to us. Then at our meeting Monday night, we can decide how we want to proceed. Which, my guess is we'll probably do a special meeting for it, but at least then by Monday, we'll know kind of what direction we're going. That's my suggestion. Anyone else have ideas?
No, that sounds okay. I suppose I won't mind a little more time than just a week, but I see the reasoning.
I don't see why you have to have it open for 2 weeks, for sure, you know, so. It'd be nice, then we could decide next Monday how we wanna handle it, so. Does that work for everyone?
Do you think that's enough time to get notified to the whole city?
I think so, for ones that are interested. We got websites and we got the email notification, and it's the only other thing we have to communicate other than a newsletter, which obviously we're not gonna do that, so.
No.
And it will be posted on our Facebook site and Nextdoor site too.
Yeah, and it'll get
Yeah.
around, so I don't think that's gonna be too much of a concern, so.
Okay.
And just submit a resume and
Yeah.
letter of interest, right?
Yeah.
However we've done in the past. Do you need a motion on that, Jack?
No.
Okay. All right,
I do have one question on, following the election after that, statement and information here means that 2 council members will be elected a 4-year, and 1 council member to a 2-year term. Is there any differentiation on who, because there'd be 3 candidates, who gets a 4-year term and who gets a 2-year term, or will it go by votes?
It's actually a separate seat. You can't, a person can't run for, you know,
Yep.
normally we'd have 2 up,
Yep.
right,
Yes.
for 4-year terms.
Yes,
This is a separate election.
okay,
And
so,
as far as I understand, it can't have on the ballot 2 different times either. so.
That's correct. This will be on the ballot, but it'll be a separate item, so you either have to
Okay.
declare where you're running for the
So-
special seat or the 4-year term.
Yeah,
okay, so how it normally looks, we have mayor, vote for 1, council members, vote for 2, and then there'd be another section below that for 2-year term council member.
Correct.
I assume so. It'll be on the same
Yes,
ballot, right?
yes.
Okay, I was just wondering how that would be specified.
It might be a little
Yeah.
challenging campaigning for seats, but I've seen it done in other cities too, so. Okay, any other discussion?
I'd just like to thank, Ms. Beck for her service to the city. I wish she would've given it a little more time, but everybody has their reasons and they have to do what they think is best for them, but I do wish to thank her for her service. It's a big process going through an election and a lot of work, and just doing this job for 8 months, it's a lot of work. So, I'd like to thank her for that.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Our special meeting is adjourned. EDA starts in 43 minutes.